the Ball Podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. I am also the CEO of the Off the Ball Network. And I got a special show with me with a special guest, someone that is special to the network, the VP of the Off the Ball Network, my guy, Mo Murphy. What's going on, brother?
What's good, bro? It's been a minute. We busy. Our schedules have changed
Busy
so
is an
much over these past couple
that's
months.
an understatement, bro. Busy is
Yeah,
a
busy is
massive
an understatement, bro. It's like being fathers and significant others. And, I done jumped into the coaching realm, coaching AAU. So it's like, bro, trying to pump out a show and be around practice and getting off work and making sure the kids are set up, making sure the wife good, bro. It gets tough.
That is a fact, bro. Like, just trying to find any type of time. Like right now, I'm doing the show and not even schedule. I just say, it used to be like, and it used to be crazy. I used to schedule everything. Used to be scheduled. Like, I got the show. Everything. Now that like schedule got a little more crazy with work and all that, I'm just like, whenever I get the littlest time to find that little hole to get a show in, I try to do it. But like I said, we literally just did this like a minute ago and be like, yo, you free? Yeah. You free? All right, let's go. Because, we got kids and my daughter's out. No, she pop up any second. So, but the kind of what we're going to talk about today is essentially our two teams. We're going to talk about the New York Knicks and we're going to talk about the Miami Heat. Obviously, two different spectrums of the world, right? Miami is coming off a 7-game series against the Boston Celtics in which they lost, and the Knicks are coming off another disappointing season, missing the playoffs again. So Mo, let's just get right into it. The Miami Heat, valiant effort, went 7 games with Boston, did everything possible to try to Jimmy, try to hit the three to be a hero and all that to end the game, but still. I know obviously it's disappointing you're not in the finals, but obviously still a successful season in a way. But there's still a lot of things that the Miami Heat need to figure out going forward. Like, yes, you had a nice run, but there's a lot of things to figure out. You got to figure out what Duncan Robinson's situation. You're paying him a whole lot of money to be grabbing DMPs. Max Strus kind of took that spot from him. You got to figure out Tyler Hero. He wants to start. Hey, he's 6 man a year. He wants to. He's more than that. He feels like he's more than that. And he's shown that he's more than that. Feel about Kyle Lowry situation. He did not look the same. So for you, Mo, just talk to me about the good things you saw this season that led to the success, and then what do you think this team needs to do in order to make sure that you're in the finals next season?
So. I don't want to say I told you so, and it's not necessarily I told you so, but, we had all these preseason conversations, right, doing our shows on halftime and on podcasts, and there's 2 things that people felt like I was crazy about feeling the way I felt. One was, I felt like the Golden State Warriors were contenders, and I don't know why everybody's counting them out as champions, and boom, they win the championship.
Before I had to interrupt you, but I thought it was over. And we could talk. That's a whole other show, and I'll lick my wounds. I thought it was a wrap, and I've said it on a bunch of shows. I thought it was done, and they proved me wrong.
And you remember how many I didn't say, oh, Golden State's going to win the championship, but I just was like, bro, they're contenders. Why?
No, I said that was done. I said, hey,
yeah,
they may be a play-in team from now coming on. I didn't know the Clay situation. I didn't think Steph can truly lead a team by himself with Clay. Injuries, Draymond's slowing down a little bit, and all these they got a lot of young guys. So how do they incorporate that? But I didn't expect Wiggins to emerge and step up and all that. And that was a lot. But yeah, I got to eat crow, man. I did definitely. I thought it was a wrap for them. I thought it was an absolute wrap.
You remember we had a lot of those conversations, and I was banking on Clay coming back and being able to be impactful or whatever. But then the second thing, which is why I brought that up, because there were 2 things in the offseason that I got a lot of backlash for feeling the way I felt. And that was the Kyle Lowry contract, right? And everybody was like, that's great for Miami. That's exactly what they needed. And you remember what I said? I said, for year 1, yes, but he signed a 3-year contract. And you see in year 1, Kyle Lowry did make an impact. He has some personal issues. Nothing has ever come out about what it is, so I hope whatever the personal issues that he sat out a lot of games for, obviously it had to be something personal to him and very close to him for him to miss games. So I hope that side of things is taken care of, and I hope he's okay. But then he's getting old. Like, he's old. There were two contracts that a lot of people had problems with, and it was Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry. 3 years at 36, 37 years old. Those are long-term deals.
I told you I did not like that contract. I told you I did not like the Kyle
That's
Lowry.
a long-term deal for a 36-year-old to commit to the next 3 years, where you did a 2+1, but you gave that +1 as a player option, not a team option.
So now you have
That's a long time. Like,
he's going. Let's just say, Mo, we can say it, he's opting in.
100%.
He's opting in,
and and it becomes. Y'all know I said, I was good with the year one, but I was more a 1-1 with a player option. I'm okay with
I would have felt comfortable
in the next year. Like, I'm okay with that. Even if it doesn't pan out, all right, one more year off of Kyle Lowry, and then we get off that, almost $30 million a year. Yeah. But I'm looking into next year, like, there's so much positive of what happened this year, but there's so much negative looking into next year, because you look at Miami and you're like, we all know there's a glaring need as whether you want to call it a primary ball handler or scorer or a secondary guy. Jimmy Butler is totally different in the playoffs than in the regular season. So if you're like, we need to add another guy so Jimmy's not the only scoring option in the playoffs, if we're only talking playoffs, that's fine. But there's so many names that I would love for the Miami Heat to get. There's so many names that the Miami Heat are attached to already. We know they got interest in Donovan Mitchell. We know they got interest in Bradley Beal. But cap space exists in the NBA. It doesn't exist in the NFL, but it exists in the NBA. And so there's not really that cash over cap option. You could dive deep into the luxury tax, but, not every owner got that kind of money where they're diving $200 million into the, into the luxury tax, where they're like, you know what, if it gets me a championship or close, I'm okay with paying that. Like Golden State did, and it's not a knock on anybody, but it's a bet on yourself situation. And so I'm looking at Miami, and going into next year, it's like preseason, y'all know I wanted Donovan Mitchell in Miami. Going into the season when there were possibilities that they were talking about breaking up the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert thing, even around the trade deadline, I wanted Donovan Mitchell. But as things have progressed throughout the season, Donovan Mitchell should not be the guy the Miami Heat should chase after it as the first option. I think it's Bradley Beal. I think the Heat have to go after Bradley Beal. I think they have to go hard. My only problem with that is how much is too much for trying to get Bradley Beal, and what do you think it does for your team? Because there's two teams in the NBA right now, just off the top of my head that I could think of, that could make a stronger package for a star player. That's the New York Knicks, and that's the Golden State Warriors. When I look at all their assets, when I look at the possibilities of how they could shake it up, whether fans love what they could put in that package, I mean, think about it. You look at New York, you got Julius Randle, you got Emmanuel Quickly. Essentially, you have RJ Barrett. If you're shooting for a superstar and the team's like, we want RJ in return, like, as a Knicks fan, whether you feel like RJ needs to go or not, no, but you got IQ, you got Obi Toppin, you have Quentin Grimes, you have McBride. Like, there's so many pieces that if you take that Randall or RJ Barrett and attach the rest of those pieces, IQ and McBride and Randall for a star, that's a stronger package, I think, that Miami could take with Tyler Hero and whatever, because I don't know
you
if
don't have a lot of draft picks either. That's the thing. You don't have a lot of draft
and I don't know if they're willing to give up Bam. And the problem is, it's not even about the draft picks. It's about where you'll pick in the draft. A first-round draft pick does not hold the same weight in the NBA that it does the NFL. You can find a superstar Hall of Fame player in the 20s in the NFL every year. There's a guy that's going to be picked in the 20s every year. One of those guys from 20 to 29 is going to be a Hall of Famer. I'd almost guarantee it almost every year. In the NBA, it's like after about 7 or 8, we start getting guys who, how can they impact being in the rotation immediately? And that's what you're looking at with Miami in the draft this year, is like, if they do end up having their first round pick, like some of the, if we just talk about some of the mock drafts, off the top of my head, I don't remember who you had taking Miami, but a common guy I've seen is EJ Liddell, which, I would love, just because a Buckeye going to the Heat, more reason to fall in love with the Heat. But still, like, do you see EJ Liddell being a Hall of Famer? Like, no, you don't. Do you see EJ Liddell being an impact player on a championship team year one? No, you don't. So there's so many things that he could do, but I think they need to get another They need to find a way to get semi-younger, get a guy entering his prime who can score the basketball at will. And the three names that off the top of my head in this free agency that hit that is Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, and Donovan Mitchell. And Donovan Mitchell's not a free agent. We're going to have to outright trade for him. But Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal are entering free agency. They have player options. They can do a sign and trade. Whatever, there's a way to get them. But
I think the Zach LaVine one is probably more realistic. Simply because I think Chicago's in win now mode.
His package ain't gonna cost you as much as Bradley Beal and
Chicago wants to win. So Chicago would maybe willing to take, let's say if it's Kyle Lowry, I think they're more willing to take a vet like that than Washington would. Because Washington would.
I think Tyler Hero is involved.
Tyler, yeah. So
I think
Hero
have to do something like that. If we want Mitchell, LaVine, or Beal, Hero's gone. Like, in my opinion, like he has to be gone just for the simple fact of his potential right now. Like he's going to, even if it's Hero and Lowry and whatever else, whether it's Strus or Vincent or Caleb Martin, whoever we have to put in future draft picks in that package, Hero's going to be gone if we want to get one of those three names. I think, period.
Yeah, no, here you obviously have to get rid of Hero because Chicago's going to want to get some type of asset that's going to be something down the line. But I think they're more willing to, let's say, if you put Kyle Lowry in that deal, I think that's a team more willing to take on Kyle Lowry than Washington would, because if it'd be one thing if Kyle's if he was on a contract year, I think Washington would be like, all right, let's just eat it for this year, and then he's coming off the books, so we don't got to worry about that $28 million. It's not going to be that bad. We just eat it for the year and all that. But Chicago. LaVine might be more realistic, like I said, the sign and trade. You won't have to give up as much. But it's still like you got to figure out there's still things, the Duncan Robinson, and that's my thing. Like when good for Duncan for getting that contract. Good for him. But undrafted free agent, transfer from a D3 school, went to your favorite school, Michigan, all those good things. But to me, when you pay a guy to pay guys who do one thing really good, just shooting from the outside, as we know, that is a very valuable thing to have. Shooting, right? Shooting, Warriors won championship shooting. Situation, though. But it's like, if he can't do nothing else, then why are you giving this man almost we gave him almost $100 million contract. Like we've seen this from a lot of players. We saw it with Bertans.
Yeah.
Right?
He
got shipped to Dallas.
And him
Joe Harris.
The first two. Yep. That is the category that he falls in.
Yeah,
but
he falls in.
Justify.
And he don't even do as much as Joe Harris. Joe Harris can create a little bit. Bertans, no. Bertans can't really create a little bit.
He's a shooter. He's a shooter.
But like Duncan doesn't really do much else and all that. So it's like to give a guy that much more. And then we saw it. A guy in Max Strus is making maybe $2 million this year. I think he's making 1.8 this year.
Yeah, it's like 1.
Outplayed a guy who's making close to $20 million, and you just gave let me get the exact details of his contract, because that means something in this, because a guy who was making less than $2 million made a guy who was making $16 million this season, and almost, what's the duration of $90 million, 5-year, $90 million. He put that guy on the bench. That's a big thing for Miami to figure out this offseason, because that is huge. Because you got Lowry who's making close to 30. You got almost $50 million that are guys that you're like, oh, damn.
We would gladly get rid of them in a trade package, but what other teams reluctantly take them in a trade package. That's essentially what you have with Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson, is like you'll gladly put them in a package, but who do you get out of that with putting them in a package? And even Tyler Hero, and it's one of those, like, when I look at it, I think the most realistic option actually is Donovan Mitchell as opposed to Zach LaVine, just because, we've seen reports. It seems like Zach LaVine is leaning more towards staying in Chicago. So now when I look at a guy who can be got, it's Donovan Mitchell, but I'm not saying it's a guarantee that he leaves Utah. There's a lot of teams that's going to want Rudy Gobert over Donovan Mitchell because they're good at the guard spot. And does Utah give both of their stars away and essentially rebuild? Because if rebuild in Utah, Think about how long it takes to rebuild in Utah. Like they're a borderline playoff team year in and year out, essentially. But if you start a full-blown rebuild, like you're not an attractive free agent spot.
That's a tough sell.
Well, like if the Lakers or if the Heat were to rebuild, or the Lakers or the New York team, those big markets that could bring in a lot of money. Like if you rebuild, like, all right, in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to get a big time free agent because our market sells itself. Well, like Utah, you're like, we got to hope that we bring in the right assets and we make the right trade package to rebuild through the draft, essentially. And that's what they did with Rudy Gobert, and that's what they did with Donovan Mitchell. And those guys turned into all-stars, essentially. But I think Donovan Mitchell could be got, and I'm going to tell you why. I think, I've had this conversation with a few people, especially Heat fans, but I think the Godfather, Pat Riley, knows what he's doing. Think about it. D-Wade goes to Chicago, comes back to Miami, we get Jimmy Butler. D-Wade is part owner of the Utah Jazz. Donovan Mitchell has been compared to Dwayne Wade a lot of times. Who knows if Dwayne Wade is not in his ear? Like, yes, he's part owner, but he's going to make money regardless. Who knows if Donovan Mitchell, because Jimmy Butler, there's been a lot of reports that Jimmy Butler, while playing alongside D-Wade, asked a lot of questions about the Miami Heat. Like, what's it like being in Miami? What's it like being the guy in Miami? How do they accept you? Da-da-da. You don't think Donovan Mitchell, heading into his prime, where there have been plenty of reports that he wants to be in a bigger market than Utah, hasn't asked those questions to D-Wade, as opposed to the guy's in great shape? So you don't think
he just lost his head coach too?
Mentor?
He just lost his head coach.
Yeah, he lost his head coach. Like, there's so many things to think that Donovan Mitchell could ask out. And you don't think the first place he asked is he went straight to the front office and asked Dwayne Wade what it's like to be the star in Miami, be the go-to guy? How do they accept you? Like, I think Miami would love, I think as a fan base and everything else, I think we would love Donovan Mitchell. But it's one of those, like, is he the answer? And that's the question. And, like, if you think yes, then, if Pat Riley, I trust Pat Riley. He makes the right move. So if Pat Riley feels like Donovan Mitchell's the answer, I'm going to ride with him. And if he ends up getting Donovan Mitchell, I'm going to be okay with that. But the problem is, I don't know if Donovan Mitchell's the answer. Like, we're a team who just went to the Eastern Conference Finals in 7 games. We were 1 game away from competing in the NBA Finals. I'm not saying we win the NBA Finals, but we were 1 game away. Do you think Donovan Mitchell gets you over that hump and gets you to the NBA Finals? Because if you're trying to improve, you went to 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. The only improvement from there is reaching the NBA Finals and essentially being very competitive, going 6 or 7 games, or essentially winning the NBA championship. And do you think a trade package for Donovan Mitchell puts you there as a Miami Heat fan? And I think that's something that you have to value. But like at Pat Riley, do you think I'm going to ask you, you're not a Heat fan, so you're on the outside looking in. Do you think Donovan Mitchell for, we'll just say Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent, and we'll say 2 future first-round picks. I don't know if that matches up salary cap-wise, so we'll have to see. But I would imagine so, with that much money in the future payment of Tyler Hero. Does that kind of trade, adding Donovan Mitchell, does that put Miami in the next tier where you essentially think they have to come in as the first or second favorite in the Eastern Conference, adding Donovan Mitchell for Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Gabe Vincent, and a couple future first-round picks?
I mean, that's essentially, you need scoring, right? You need to get another guy who could score, especially if you're going to try to beat Boston, right? That's essentially probably the one team that's
we were missing. We were missing that next guy that can consistently score. So you're talking about a big 3 of Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. Do you think that big 3 and supporting cast where, we gave up Gabe Vincent, so we're talking about Max Strus, we're talking about Caleb Martin, we're talking about PJ Tucker, we're talking about Dwayne Dedman. Like, do you think that big 3 and the rest of those guys, because I'm not sure we keep Victor Oladipo, so you think do you think that big 3 and the rest of those guys end up essentially getting you to the point where you feel like you can win a championship? If so, if you're Pat Riley and you feel like that, you pull the plug. Call it a day. If they're willing to accept a package like that and you think that's the difference, then pull the plug. But I just don't know if adding Donovan Mitchell is the answer. And it's no knock to D Mitch, but like my ultimate trade, if I'm looking at Miami, I'm going into the offseason, bro, I want Bradley Beal. Like, I almost want Bradley Beal. If I can't get Bradley Beal, I make some small moves and try and run it back with the core of the Miami Heat. Hopefully Kyle Lowry stays healthy. You heard Pat Riley's comments where, it's adamant that we get Kyle Lowry into prime Miami Heat shape. So I almost like, if I can't get Bradley Beal or Zach LaVine, I'll put Zach LaVine in there. Then essentially I just go into the offseason. We make some minor moves to improve us slightly, and we just hope that everybody continues to ascend in the way that we expect these young guys to ascend going into next season, and hopefully that's enough. And then after next season, I think that's when, if none of that's working, I think that's when you kind of blow it up and start figuring out moves that make sense for the future.
I mean, obviously, those guys are tremendous basketball players and all that. And will it put you guys over the top if you get one of those guys? It could definitely put you back in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I don't know if it definitely gets you over the hump.
And that's the question: is the Eastern Conference Finals good enough? Because you just went to 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals with Boston. So is making a move going to the Eastern Conference Finals good enough? And you have to look at the rest of the East before we don't even care about the West. Yeah. We didn't get out of the East right now. So you look at Ben Simmons. We expect Ben Simmons to come back and be healthy next year and be able to play for the Brooklyn Nets. Chris Middleton, be back healthy, ready to go for the Milwaukee Bucks. Who knows? We're not even talking about major moves. We're just talking about guys coming back healthy next year for teams that we expected to be contenders. We expect Boston to reach the finals. So we expect them to play with a chip on their shoulder. Philly, is James Harden going to get back in shape to be ready to go and play alongside an MVP player like Joel Embiid? Who knows what type of trade they make? Tobias Harris is to be God, essentially. Matisse Thybulle is out there from what we've seen and heard so far. So you're looking at other teams able to improve. And so you got to look at, like, can you run it back with this team and make minor moves, or do you have to make a major move? But if you make that major move, does that move put you in the same conversation or ahead of the conversation with some of those other teams with superstar players like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, like Giannis, like Joel Embiid? Like, does it put you ahead of those guys where you feel comfortable playing any one of those teams in a 7-game series? And if the answer is no, then don't make that move, because you could be shaking up your future. But if the answer is yes, then, if Pat Riley thinks Donovan Mitchell is the answer, then Pat Riley I trust.
Yeah. No, obviously you're always going to trust Pat Riley and all that.
I have to. He hasn't given me a reason not to. Him and Spo. I trust whatever him and Spo, whatever conclusion they come to in the offseason, I trust the moves they make, for the simple fact we've always been competitive. We've always been a playoff team, if not borderline playoff team. Once we got rid of LeBron James, we were kind of borderline, but we were always in that playoff conversation. We go to a finals. We go to Eastern Conference Finals. We've been to 2 Eastern Conference Finals in the past 3 years. We've been to a finals. Whether you validate the bubble or not, I think the Miami Heat going to the Eastern Conference Finals in 7 games this year have validated their bubble trip as far as being fluked. So it's up to Pat Riley. Like, I think Pat Riley I think Pat Riley, Coach Spo, and Jimmy Butler have to have a meeting. And you have to figure out, like, I think those 3, I think Jimmy Butler should have full say in the conversation. At least his opinion should be weighed. And I think those 3 need to sit down and be like, hey, what is it that we need? Do you think Bam needs to go? Like, do you think we need to go get Donovan Mitchell? If Bam doesn't, who do you want?
I think they got to figure out the offense, because you saw it, obviously, and that, especially the half-court offense, it was bad. It was bad. And just looking at just a stat that I had pulled up before, Miami's half-court offense they only had 90 points per 100 possessions, and I think that was the worst out of all the teams in the conference finals, and one of the worst in the playoffs. It got worse, so that needs to be taken care of. They got to figure that out. How to, I don't know if that's getting a better distributor, someone who has that's got to improve. You need more scorers, you need more shooting and all that. But they also have Tyler Hero is up for an extension too. And his max is, I think, 5 for $184. Obviously, no one, that shouldn't even be considered. Now, do you talk to him and be like, hey, let's talk, something around like 4 for whatever, 400, something in that range. It's still 25 years, still a lot of money, but you're gonna have to figure out. So there's a lot of things, Miami. They got to figure out the half court because it was bad. Like it was times where it's like it was stuck in the 90s, like, and you have to figure that out. So, and guys like Max Strus, you got to figure out if you want to keep him, going forward, because he's gonna want a little pay increase, right? He only made 1.8. Also, who's the other dude? Caleb Martin, another one. He came out of nowhere. He's played good basketball for you guys this year. Yeah, like so he's gonna want a little chunk of change, So, and obviously the Duncan Robinson dilemma and all that. So, but if you think, all right, realistically, I don't know if Beal's as realistic. I think he's gonna take the money, and I think in a 2 years, in a year or two maybe, that's when we'll get the trade rumblings with him. He's gonna get his 250.
Get it. I ain't mad at that. Get that money.
I don't even think he's gonna get traded. I think he stays, he gets his bread, and that's not even gonna happen. So I think
he can get it in a sign and trade. He can sign that deal or a sign and trade. So now you're looking at who has the cap space to take on that kind of deal.
Yes.
And I think at that point, if he's like, I want to go to Miami, I'm gonna sign and trade, but I'm gonna get this money. I'm gonna get this $48 million a year, and I want to go to Miami. Now you're looking at, now it's realistic. Like, what does that package look like to match up salary cap and things like that? And Kyle Lowry gone, which is fine with me. Tyler Hero gone, which is fine with me for a Bradley Beal, because I think Beal alongside Jimmy Butler is perfect. Like, I think that's what we need is a Beal alongside Jimmy Butler and a Bam Adebayo, like that big three in supporting cast. But the only problem is what does that supporting cast look like with all that money tied up in Jimmy, Bam, and Bradley Beal? Is that big three good enough to kind of have a mediocre, or modern day term, is that big three good enough to have a mid supporting cast? And so that's the question you have to answer.
I think also Duncan Robinson, I think
you got to unload
I don't think that's going to be hard to do. His value is so low, and he's just into his second year of that deal. That's going to be hard to move a guy with another.
Right, it's going to be hard. You got to figure out.
So you got to figure it out. He may just at the Rock. Hey, Duncan, whatever happened in the playoffs, that's in the past. Let's figure this out, because you're going to be on this team this year, for at least this year. So we're going to have to figure this out, and we need you. Because you're still a great shooter, and we need that. We need shooting. That's what we were missing, and you didn't do that. Let's figure this out this offseason. Let's make this work, because it's not like you're going anywhere. Because unless somehow Pat fleeces someone that's desperate for a shooter, I just don't see it happening. It could happen. I don't see it happening. So they gotta figure it. And if anyone can do it, it's the guy. It's the Godfather, man. The Godfather can do it, man. He's done it.
He might put a couple life-threatening things in that contract.
He might have to be like, yo, man, sleeping with the fishes or some type of. But Miami has obviously a successful season, even with a lot of deficiencies on offense. They still went 7 with a team that was absolutely dominant from January 1st on, and gave the Warriors fits, and looked like they might have been world champions. They were up 2-1 against the Warriors, And so Miami has a lot of things to figure out. It's going to be interesting. Do they go after one of those big three mentioned? Do we go after Zach, the Beal, Mitchell? Those things are on the table. Do they run it back and add a few little pieces here and there? Who knows? But still, like, a great season for the Miami Heat. I'm sure you're happy with how it happened,
Yeah, you can't look at any team that doesn't win a championship and say it wasn't a successful season. I hate that. I literally hate everybody. When anybody was to tell me Miami didn't have a successful season, anybody tell me Boston didn't have a successful season, or Dallas. Obviously, Golden State had the ultimate success, but if you tell me like, oh, Miami shouldn't be satisfied, like, I get from a player perspective. Like, we went to 7 games to the NBA Finals. Like, we were close to reaching the finals. That wasn't enough for me. But as a fan, and like when you look back, you can't tell me that you don't think the Miami Heat didn't have a successful season. Boston as well, going 6 games into the NBA Finals. Dallas Mavericks reaching the Western Conference Finals. Like, there's so many things where, like, I don't love the if you don't win the championship, it's a failure. Like, no, because failure is based on expectations. And so when, the mass majority doesn't expect you to do this, expect you to do that. Nobody expected Miami Heat to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and go to 7 games. Nobody expected the Boston Celtics to reach the NBA Finals. Hell, nobody expected the Warriors to reach the NBA Finals, let alone win the championship. So they had the ultimate success, but to say nobody expected Dallas. There was one guy I heard who had him as a sleeper pick to make a deep run, and that was our guy, Zach Raymond from the Off the Glass podcast. Shout out to Zach. But he was the guy who had them as a sleeper pick to make a deep run in the Western Conference playoffs. But outside of that, like the vast majority did not have Dallas getting there. So you can't tell me those 4 teams that stood up top for their conferences didn't have a successful season. I can't stand for anybody to tell me that our season for the Miami Heat was a failure. Now, your team on the other end, which I'm sure we're about to get into, I'm sure
let's talk about that. My beloved New York Knicks, the team that probably reason why I have diabetes, because they just stress me out and they make me eat a lot. So let's talk about that team from New York. And obviously, not the season we wanted, very disappointing, and we can go into all that. But just how this offseason looks for this team. There's some things to figure out. RJ Barrett, extension eligible, can get the max. I think it's the same thing with what Tyler Hero can get. I think 5 years. And we'll get into that. This is, I believe, year 1 of the Julius Randle extension. You got Mitchell Robinson unrestricted. So there's some needs. Obviously, they have the 11th pick, and there's some things to figure out with this team. Obviously, not the season we wanted. Finishing outside, looking in, needed to make the play-in. That was at least my one of my expectations. I thought they'd be a play-in team for sure, but didn't happen. And like you said, you asked me, how do you look at this team as the Miami Heat as an outsider, as not a fan? So for you, I'm going to start with you first, Bo. You're looking at this Knicks team. What do you think? What direction should they take? Because they kind of have, I think their medium age is around 26, 27 years old. So they got their mix of vets. They got the pretty much half of half, right? Young guys that have potential, but we all know that P word can get you in trouble. And then you mix with vets. Obviously, we know Coach Thibodeau, he's the head coach of this team, likes playing vets and all that. So from an outsider looking in on this New York Knicks team, what's the direction this team should take going forward?
So for me, and you're a much bigger NBA draft guy than I am, putting out mock drafts, big boards. Obviously, salute to you, but I look at it like this: you're less than a week away, 5 days. We're recording this on Saturday. You're 5 days away from deciding what direction you should go to, and so there's one name. Like, I think trying to figure out what direction the New York Knicks should go is one name. How much do you value Jaden Ivey? And the reason I say that is
hot name.
He can be like, and that's the hot name, and y'all are attached as well as multiple teams, but obviously you're gonna have to trade up to be able to drive Jaden Ivey. And so if that's the direction of your team, then how much of the future is he worth to you? I think you could get Jaden Ivey without giving up RJ Barrett. And so therefore I think that's a win for the Knicks.
It's costly though. And I put this tweet out earlier that seen people, everyone, trades how they want to give up as little as possible. I think it's going to cost you a lot more than people.
It's going to cost you Randall.
It's going to cost.
It's going to cost you.
It could cost you, which I know a lot of Knicks fans would be like, I'll trade him for a bag of potato chips and some Gatorade powder. So like that's not that they wouldn't mind that, but it's going to cost you, and it might not. If it's not Randall, it might cost you obviously the 11th pick, maybe the Dallas pick they get next year from the Porzingis trade. It might cost you a couple picks and a young player. It might cost you a Quentin Grimes. If you someone like that, but like you said, and I know exactly what you're saying. If you think I believe, and I told this on Knicks Fan Wilden, I was on there last week. I said, if you think Ivy is your guy, and it means giving up a couple first and a role player, a player like a Quentin Grimes, who has shown some
Bye.
potential, right? Or even an Obi Toppin,
Bye.
or even an Obi Toppin.
If I could keep
If you think
Julius Randle and I could draft Jaden Ivey, I don't care what it costs me at that point. Like,
if you think Ivy is an all-star level play, if you think, all right,
in 3
you
years,
have to do this. If you don't think, if you're evaluating, you're like, all right, let's say that deal is 2 first-round picks, Ivy, not Ivy, Obi and Grimes. Let's just hypothetically, that's the trade. You have to legit. All right, is Obi? He had a nice stretch toward the end. Everyone brings this up, which is right. He did have a nice stretch, but someone also counted as like, hey, the last 2 weeks of the NBA season is like the last 2 weeks of school. Is like it don't matter. Like that. That's kind of, it's hard to evaluate that.
It like you don't. Bro, the last 2 weeks of school, we're like, bro, we know summer around the corner. The teachers know summer around the corner.
You're not going hard.
Up just for that perfect attendance.
Even the teachers aren't going hard, right? No one's going hard. So like, how do you evaluate that?
Headphones in, like,
like
that point, teachers don't care, and that's the same thing with players. Is like, if you're not in the playoffs, you're not concerned about it. If you're in the playoffs, like if you think about it, the last 2 weeks, I will say, and I'll say at max 7 to 8 teams, and that's a high number, but I'm saying maximum 7 to 8 teams care about the last 2 weeks, and that's because of seeding. And like for this year, we saw how close it was with the Eastern Conference. We saw how close it was with the Western Conference outside of 1 and 2. Like you being 3 through 6 was like them 2 weeks, them last 7 to 8 games could be the difference of you being the 3rd seed or the 6th seed. The 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, it was the difference between you being the Brooklyn and being a playing team. Like, that's the difference. So that changes the game. But for majority out of 7 or 8, we got 30 teams. So for, 65, 70% of the league, it doesn't matter. So it's like, when I'm looking at it, like, okay, you balled. A lot of guys were not playing hard or whatever. And shout out to Obi Toppin for taking advantage of a moment to kind of prove whether you could play or not. But I put it like this. I think the Knicks' future is how much you value Jaden Ivey. But the problem is, how much does the rest of the league value Jaden Ivey? Like, I think that's over the next 5 days, up until draft night on Thursday, I think that's where the Knicks will be able to announce to Knicks Twitter. I won't even say Knicks Nation. Y'all not a nation. Y'all are Knicks Twitter. But I think that's where they'll be able to value Knicks Twitter and the rest of the Knicks fans around the world, which is probably like the 2%, because everybody else on Knicks Twitter giving their opinions and hosting these spaces and things. But
it's a different world, bro. Like
it is. And you and Edgar and everybody else has introduced me to this world, and I'm like, damn, like the Knicks fan.
But just think about this: if you haven't experienced Knicks Twitter or Knicks fandom,
I've experienced.
You've gotten a full dose. Being at the network for what, two plus years, right? Almost 2 years. Like you've gotten a full dose of Knicks Twitter and all that. And I feel like,
win or lose, the Knicks could have 3 years ago. I say 3 years ago, the Knicks could have won the championship. And in my mind, going into that NBA Finals, all I would have cared about is like, okay, if the Knicks are in the championship, as long as it's a good NBA Finals, I don't care. Like, I really don't care. Like, if the Knicks win the championship, cool. But being introduced from you and Edgar especially, shout out to Edgar, because he be in the spaces heavy. He keep us on our toes. He's sending the Knicks, tweets heavy. Like, he keeps us in the loop of Knicks Twitter and their feelings. And so up until 2 years ago, joining the Off the Ball Network, bro, I wouldn't have cared. If the Knicks won the championship 4 years ago, I really would give zero cares, bro. I would not care. Like, hey, they won the championship. Shout out to y'all. Especially being a fan of a team who's seen 3 championships in my lifetime. I'm like, hey, shout out to y'all. Y'all get to hold that one. Y'all won one more recently than my team. That's cool. Like, hey, win the championship. But after being introduced to Knicks Twitter, well, that's a different world. That's a whole different world.
And I think every basketball head who's not from New York or is not a Knicks fan and doesn't understand the culture, they need to just for at least a week.
You need to be introduced.
Dive in. You got to introduce it. You got to understand it because it'll give you a different perspective. Because if you're from the outside in looking at it, you're like, oh, those guys are a bunch of buffoons, bing bong, all this, bang, all that. You won't understand it. But like, I feel like you and a lot of the guys at the network have understood it. They may not agree with it. They may not like it all the time. It makes
me feel so happy being a Miami Heat fan, and the reason why I
appreciate it, yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest. I've joined the spaces with Sean, who's a big Knicks Twitter guy. You know, he's a voice of the Knicks essentially on the social media space. What column? I can't remember his name. He's a movie actor. I don't want to disrespect him, but he's been a huge voice of the Knicks essentially on the social media space. And I've listened to their space, and like in a way, I love what they do. Shout out to them for doing that the day after and all that. Danny B, you know, a lot of guys who commit themselves to the day after Knicks. I love listening, and I'm gonna be honest, like whether it's up, like whether it's very high or it's very down. Shout out to them for being loyal fans. Like I know we might clown them for you know being very tomorrow, but very shout out to them because I respect loyal fandom. And when it's a bad night,
it's loyal.
Hey, when it's a good loyal night, they beat their chest. And whether you think they're fools would be the word fools for doing it, shout out to them. Shout out to Sean. Shout out to, you know, what's his name? I know you know his name better than I do. McCullum.
I think his name is Jolito.
I don't want to disrespect him because he does great work. He's an actor, so I don't want to feel like I'm disrespecting.
He's been on a lot of shows. A lot of
Edgar's, you know, my guy Edgar is deep in the Knicks Twitter. He is, you know, he has an argument of who was king of Knicks Twitter. So shout out to everybody who does that. But it's introduced me to a world where, like, thank God I'm a fan of a team who, like, we ride or die with our team, but we don't die with our team. Like, we're ride or die. I love the Heat when they're doing good, but when they're doing bad, I am not as bothered.
I think I've been like that as someone who makes basketball content and for the last few years. Like, I think I've maybe before I did this, I was like a Knicks loss or whatever. I was dumb. I was dumb. I was like super passionate, and not that I'm not passionate, but like the losses, I don't get too down on the losses. I don't get too high. Like even when the Knicks were having success last season, I was like, all right, relax. And then when they won a 9-0,
multiple times, it was like, okay, like this is a good year.
I told people
go from here, like, and that's the question that you have to answer when you have high success for a team that the expectations were no success. The answer is where do we go from here? And you know, I picked the Knicks to beat the Hawks last year. Like I did. And it was full blown from the heart where I'm like, I think the Knicks will beat the Hawks. Like I look at the matchup,
I was one of the few people because everyone's like, yo, I think the match because everyone was like, all right, do we rather play Boston or we rather play? And I was like, I'd rather play Boston. And that looks crazy now because Boston just went to the finals and they won 6 against the Warriors. But I'm like, Boston was down last year. I was like, I'd rather play them. I feel like Atlanta's coming up. They're getting healthier. And I'm like, and then there was a part of me was like, they're gonna rile up Trae Young, and I didn't want that, and that's exactly what happened. And all, but not to get too much into that because that last season was last season this year. Obviously, the trading up to 4 is something that I've heard of late, and like I said, it might cost it. But if you feel like Ivy's your guy, you got to go get your guy. I truly believe if you think he's your guy, go up. But if it has to be a reasonable deal. And even I've even thrown this, like, even if you can't do that, maybe trading up to 7, or I think Portland's at 7. Maybe they want to trade and try to get a Dyson Daniels type. Like, I feel like you got to come away with a player that's going to help, is going to be able to do something this year, contribute.
I think Ivy's the answer though. Like,
no, of course. I said that, like, to me, my number 1 on my board for the Knicks would be Ivy somehow to get that, like. But if they can't
figure out a way,
you got to figure out a way, though.
I'm a Knicks fan. I'm looking and I'm like, we have to figure out a way. And I know, look, y'all flipped on Julius Randle, so That is crazy. Not
So
you.
I saw that coming from a mile away.
You're a Knicks fan, so I put you in the y'all.
Yeah, I saw that coming from a mile away. And you know who's next? You know who will be next?
I seen it too, and you know what's crazy? I was upset with Julius Randle for giving them a team-friendly deal, and everybody was all the Knicks fans. No, that's what you need to do. No, get your damn money. Don't give them no discount.
And now he's probably thinking
I don't believe in any. I'm for the players getting as much money as possible. So when Julius Randle gave that player discount, I'm like, bruh, you don't owe the city of New York nothing. If the max of whatever money you could get on the table, whether it's 180, 200, 205, I don't know what it was. But if they're saying you could get 205 and you took 160, in my mind, looking at it from a player perspective, you're stupid.
Yeah.
I wouldn't care about the team when I'm trying to sign a deal. You want me to tell you why? Your job is to be a player, maximize your value as a player, maximize the wins on the court, but maximize your value. And so if the rest of the league values you at 205 and you give a team 160, I'm going to be honest, I think it's crazy. And the reason why I'm all for it, if Bradley Beal tells us today, I'm going to stay in Washington, I'm going to sign that 5-year deal, and I'm going to get $48 million a year, I'm going to be like, bro, screw championships. Because you know why? Championships don't carry with you 20 years from now.
And he doesn't have that. Players like that don't have the legacy thing like a KD or LeBron James.
I'm glad you said that because, I've been huge.
Like, it doesn't matter if Bradley Beal wins the championship
on the legacy thing. And I'd be like, bro, there's about 5 to 7 players right now that are building their legacy. Outside of that, I'd be like, maximize. And if you go and win a championship later on in your career, cool. Yeah. But while you're in your prime, maximize how much money you can. That's why I applaud Carmelo Anthony when he signed the deal, because look, he could have stayed another year in Denver, went to Miami, and he could have took less money. Instead, he was like, bro, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to get all this money. When Melo signed his deal, believe it or not, people think it's crazy. He signed the richest deal in NBA history, and people forget about that. And it's like, all right, well, he could have had a championship by now had he played with LeBron and D-Wade or whatever. But, hey, bro, friendships are a lifetime if y'all are really friends. Money comes and goes. And so if you can maximize how much money you can get, maximize that. So it's like, if Julius Randle, I think he's crazy. And I told you this before the season. I think he's crazy for giving the Knicks a home team discount to build a winning culture. You know why?
Thank God he did, though.
But it's not his responsibility. Exactly. He is a player. His responsibility is to play the game of basketball, build his value as high as possible, and then when the rest of the league tells you what your value is, sign for that value based on the median of what the league tells you you're valued at. You're not a GM. You're not an owner. You shouldn't even as a player pay attention to the salary cap. Why? Because it's not your responsibility. That is not your job. And Julius Randle taking less money, what would he have done to his legacy? If Julius Randle wins a championship next year in the city of New York, that makes him legendary. If the Knicks win the championship next year, let's just be honest, with Julius Randle being the best player in the city of New York, that makes him legendary. But 20 years from now, outside of the city of New York, who cares about Julius Randle winning the championship?
Yeah, he doesn't have a legacy thing.
It's generational wealth. Exactly. $40 million is a big deal. Like, that's a big difference. Even though it's like $8 million over the next 5 years, it's a huge difference. Like, bro, we're not millionaires. Do you know what I could do with $8 million? And you gave that up per year? You know what I could do?
I'll take Max Strus's deal. I'll take Max Strus 1.8.
Bro, give me 1.8 next year, and you tell me what type of person I am on these podcasts. But I'm throwing money just because. Like, I got it.
But the Knicks gonna have to figure some things out for sure. They have some contracts that they may be able to unload. Alex Burks, Derrick Rose, Nerlens Noel, Kemba is obviously they waived him, so they have some money. Yeah, he's gone, but he's still on the books. But they're all deals that are expiring. So those are deals that
pissed on me because I thought that was a great signing.
Yeah, and it was worth it regardless. It was worth it. I
felt like it was a win. It was a win-win situation. If Kemba Walker is the Kemba Walker of old, then you got him for $8 million. If the Kemba Walker is the injury-prone guy that we know, it's only $8 million. It was a win-win situation. If he doesn't contribute to whatever you got going on this season, it's only $8 million and you get him off the book. So at the end of the day, I don't think Kemba Walker contract was a bad contract. Like it was $8 million. Like, and it cost you this year, but it's like if he produced, then great, you only got him at $8 million. And if he didn't, it's like whatever. Like it's a 1 year, $8 million. He'll be all right.
Exactly.
Like
it's not that. All right.
I don't feel like that deal was that bad.
Yeah, it wasn't. So, as we wrap up, I got a few more minutes left. I want to ask you 3 questions regarding the Knicks. 3 quick questions. So just run them to me quick. I'm going to ask you these 3 things. You're the GM. All right. First, do you give RJ Barrett an extension this season, or do you say, hey, we're going to play this out until next season so we could get a better evaluation of you?
That's tough. I can only imagine what the next 2 questions are if that's what you started with.
That's going to be a big thing because he's,
I give him the extension. And I'm going to be honest. This is me sitting on the outside in, but I've also been the guy.
Full max?
Yes. Whatever money he can accumulate, I give it to him. He's gotten better every year. He showed you he could be the guy. He's what, 22 at this point? 21. He'll be 22 next season, at some point in next season. Yeah, I give him the max. You got to ride. Sometimes you have to ride with guys you draft. And RJ Barrett is a guy.
He's 22. He is 20. He just turned 20.
Okay, so he just turned 22. So he'll turn 23 at the end of next season or after the offseason, depending on, the longevity of the next season. Bro, I give him the max. Why? Because RJ Barrett is a walking bucket. And he's been a guy that when him, Cam Reddish, and Zion were together in Duke, I said that RJ Barrett will be the best player out of those 3.
But 5 years, $186 million, Mo? 5 years, man. That's a lot of money to give to him.
That deal does nothing to your salary cap.
$32 million a year. I know the cap's going up.
I will give him $32 million a year because 2 years from he's been getting better every year. In 2 years from now, if he continues to get better, I got him at a discount. Where if he balls out, what is he available for next year? He's got to be available for more money because the cap's going to go up. So he's going to be available for more money.
Shit,
I get the deal.
$30 million might not be like $30 million like we're used to. So.
Yeah, but I bet on RJ Barrett. One, I love RJ Barrett. I think he has it in him. And think about it. Like, he's fine in a New York Knicks uniform. He does what he needs to do. He gets better every year. But think about a guy I look at, Brandon Ingram, right? He went into a different situation outside of the Lakers playing alongside LeBron James, and he flourished. He was an all-star last year. This past year, he was a borderline all-star. But I think Brandon Ingram is a very fair comparison as far as a career playing out. Bro, Brandon Ingram is a walking bucket. They went 6 in Phoenix. If you don't think RJ Barrett could be that kind of potential, then don't sign him. But I think RJ Barrett can be that kind of potential. I give him the money. 2 years from now, if he improves a little bit next year, 2 years from now, that deal is not as bad. I give him the money. I keep RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett is going nowhere. I don't care if I have to make him the face of the Knicks. He's 22 years old. Bro, guys don't hit their prime till 26, 27. I will sign him all the way up until his prime, and I'll revisit that situation. And if he doesn't give me what my expectations for the Knicks, but he has value around the league, then you could trade him in 2 to 3 years anyway. I give him the money. I don't even wait.
And that's going to be a decision. I personally would wait. I would wait till next season, but that's going to be. All right. My next one. Would you re-sign Mitchell Robinson? He's a free agent. Obviously, he was a second-round pick. Didn't make much money, but is going to be sought after. There's going to be teams, Chicago, Charlotte. There's going to be teams that are going to be interested. Do you give him an extension?
I say no. And the reason I say no,
I think I agree with you, man.
Is because I think you get in a bidding war for a guy that can be replaceable in 2 years.
Exactly, especially a guy that literally hasn't shown you anything offensive. Like I think I forgot the stat. I
He took
just
a
was
little
reading
bit
it
of
too.
leave, but he's in the gym, and those videos
He
are
takes no out, nothing. Everything is literally outside the
Bro,
paint. I
those-
think like 4 to 6. I think someone said 4 to 6 shots outside of the restricted area. That's it.
bro, those videos are cute of him, working
Yeah.
out and shooting threes. That's cute. But I say no because he's replaceable in 2 years.
Yeah.
And
I
so if
think
you
he's
sign
replaceable.
him, you're going to sign him to at least a 4+1, even 3+1. I think he's replaceable in a year or
4
two.
for 60, maybe 4 for 70. He's probably gonna want that. 4 for
say no.
80. Yeah,
I say
I
no
agree.
because he's replaceable in a year or two. Like next year, going through all the next season, you'll feel like you could replace Mitchell Robinson with some draft prospect. If you're bad, there's a draft prospect that you feel like you can replace him with. And if you're semi-decent and you're borderline a play-in team or a playoff team, you still feel like there's a guy entering free agency that you could get that would give you better minutes than Mitchell Robinson. So I say no. I don't.
I think I might have to go with you. I think you can get options, especially through the draft. Mark
Let
Williams,
somebody else
Jalen
overpay.
Duran, Christian Colocu. There's a few guys you can even get later.
Yeah, let somebody else
Second round.
overpay.
Yeah.
They
I
the
think
young
exactly, and it sucks because he's one of our guys. But business is business, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's no longer a New York Knick. All right, last one, Mo, before we close on, and then thank you, Mo, for chopping on Off Ball Podcast. Like I said, 100%. Minute. So last, when are you going to come to New York? And
I'm trying to
are
figure
you
that
going to rock? And
so bad.
Are you going to rock Tim's a Yankee hat and say, "Bing bong"? I need to know. The world needs to know.
I want to come to New York so bad. I've had that conversation with my wife. I've never been.
You have to come. You've never been here either. Okay, so that's even better.
So I'm gonna end up coming. My wife has been once. That's our battle. Is she's been once way back in the day. So I'm gonna come to New York. It's gonna happen. I don't care.
You have to.
I don't care if Off the Ball Network flames out. I'm coming to New York. You're my guy. So if anything else, I'm coming to New York. And if I come to New York,
if things come, if certain things that we're having going behind the scenes happen,
and I'll be there.
That may be able to happen, a lot quicker than usual.
Yeah, 100%. Then you're just gonna put me in. But am I gonna come to New York? Yes, I'm gonna come to New York. I don't care regardless. We got to link up. We've been too close for the past few years to not say,
Jelani was here last summer.
Yeah, Jelani beat me to New York. It's like, bro, at this point, the relationship we built, I'm going to come to New York. I don't care if Off the Ball Network flames out and we're like, hey, we all just go do our own thing. That has nothing to do with the personal relationships we built. So, yes, I'm going to come to New York and I'm going to come hoop at Rucker Park with you.
Oh, yeah, we're going to go over. I'll take you. We do the whole not the typical tourist day. I'll take you to the spots where you need to know.
We're just gonna hoop, and I want to get something to eat. Like at the end of the day, if I link with you, I'm gonna eat, and we're gonna hoop. That's fine. Am I gonna wear Tim's? I'm gonna be honest.
Just wear Yankee fit. You don't have to. I don't wear Tim's, so just wear the Yankee fit. It's already exposed on the internet.
I'm not gonna wear the fitted. Because I don't wear fitted.
You can wear the dad hat. I'll get you.
I got you. So I have the dad hat, the Yankees dad hat. Yes, I'm a Rays fan, and I got backlash for owning that hat. But for me, I'm all about my hat matching my shoes, and therefore the Yankees was the closest thing to matching my shoes outside the Dallas Cowboys.
Wants to be a Yankee fan so bad.
I don't want to be a Yankees fan, but I like A-Rod and Derek Jeter. I respect them. I'm a Rays fan, but. You know what? I want to come to New York around Christmas time so I could get the full experience. I want to go down.
You want to be cold as heck? Want to be cold as balls?
Yeah, I want to be cold. Look, listen, I like the cold weather for somebody visiting. I don't mind visiting the cold weather because I know I'm going to get out of there. So, yes, I want to wear the bubble jacket, the jeans, the Timbs, and the Yankees cap. Yeah, 100%. So,
don't be surprised if the cops whoop, whoop. We were like, hey, what you doing?
Yeah,
but no.
Listen, as long as I'm
definitely got to come.
I'll show them my military ID. But I mean, no harm. I'm enjoying the New York culture. Give me the, the bubble jacket, the jeans, and the Timbs, and the New York fitted. I wear the navy blue bubble jacket, the jeans, some Jordans. Some Timbs and the New York fitted or a New York hat, and 100%. Yeah. Yes, I plan on coming to New York, and yes, I plan on wearing Timbs because If I'm gonna go somewhere and enjoy the culture, I gotta be cultured.
You got to be cultured.
You gotta
Yep. You
and I'm gonna say Bing Bong, 100%. If I go in New York, I'm gonna record me either in front of Madison Square Garden, just because I've always wanted to see Madison Square Garden. With me loving basketball, growing up playing basketball, things like that, like that's a mecca. Like going to see Madison Square Garden has been something I've wanted to see since I was a kid. It has nothing to do with fandom. It's just about history. Like taking a picture in front of Madison Square Garden is a goal of mine just because of the history of New York City basketball. I wanted to pound it twice, dribble 2 balls.
I still want to get on the court. I think it's going to happen.
I want to play at Rucker. I just want to make a basket at Rucker. I don't care if nobody's there.
We're going to make that happen, Mo. We're going to make that happen for sure. But
I'm definitely going to, and I'm going to get some pizza. I got to get some pizza. I got to get some New York pizza.
We got to get you some New York pizza so you know what the deal is and why it's the greatest of all time. But that's my guy, Mo Murphy, VP of the Off Ball Network. My man, appreciate you coming on the show. Been a minute. Thanks for coming on, talking Miami Heat. We talked about the offseason. We're talking Knicks, a little bit of everything. And he will be coming to New York very soon. So I'm excited about that. But, Mo, before we log off, where can people find you? And if you got anything coming up, let the people know.
Yeah, so you can find me at Up in Flames Pod on Instagram, at Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter. And I'm probably about to record a show here in either this evening or tomorrow. Like I said, I have basketball practice. My schedule been kind of heavy, but I'm gonna put out something over this weekend. I got a 3-day weekend between Juneteenth, being in the military. We get to celebrate that and be off Monday. So over the next couple of days, be looking out for like kind of NBA review show. Yep. Just talk about the season, talk about the Warriors winning the championship, and some more offseason stuff, and kind of get away from my team and things like that, and just think some offseason moves. So 100%, yeah, I'm gonna put out something over the next day or two.
Okay, let's do that, and make sure to go check out the Off the Ball Network, OTB_network on Twitter, OTB365. We're gonna start getting back up going. You can catch me Off the Ball Pod. Drafts coming up in 5 days. Excited about that. I have some news about draft day coverage and all that. I have 2 shows I'll be putting out this week. A Knicks kind of draft preview and my last mock draft. I'll also have my big board up on offtheballnetwork.com. So make sure to check that out on OTB_network and offtheballnetwork.com. Make sure to check that out. And like I said, this is a great show. Thanks for coming on, Mo. Be well, be safe, take care. Peace out, guys.